Before I invite the Reverend Keith Osman Smith, BEM, to lead us in prayers, please could I invite members to take a minute's silence to remember Councillor Jackie Loveridge, who sadly passed away on the 18th of January. Please take the seat. Thank you. I now invite Reverend Keith Oswald Smith, Baptist Minister, Telford Street Pastor Coordinator, and Multi-Faith Chaplain, to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Mayor. I realised this morning, good evening everyone, I realised this morning that it is 2 years exactly since I last stood in front of you. And there have been a lot of changes in those 2 years. The world has changed much. And tonight we come together in the shadow of war. So let's widely pray tonight. God of love and compassion, we come together tonight, still in the aftermath of difficult and troubling days in this locality, and in the lives of many in our community. And so we bring before you those who have suffered damage and loss through the storms of February. And we pray that they will know the continued support of friends and families as they strive to recover some semblance of normality. We give thanks for our National Health Service, the emergency services, for the Shropshire Fire and Rescue Service, West Mercia Police and West Midlands Ambulance Service. And we thank you for their commitment to their calling and for their skills and expertise, so clearly witnessed by all of us in our community. And we are grateful for the staff and the officers of the Borough Council who worked tirelessly through the emergency, and for so many other agencies who have worked tirelessly together in support of all of our community. Many stories yet to be told, and so many people who deserve our thanks and our praise for their commitment and for going the extra mile, not once but many times over, too many to name and number, but without whom things might have been quite different. So now we pray for Ukraine and its people, and we use these words. Loving God, we pray for the people of Ukraine, for all those suffering or afraid, that you will be close to them and protect them. We pray for world leaders, for compassion, strength, and wisdom to guide their choices. We pray for the world, that in this moment of crisis we may reach out in solidarity to our brothers and sisters in need. May we walk in your ways, so that peace and justice become a reality for the people of Ukraine and for all of this world. And as we bring our own thoughts and prayers and have paused in quietness, we now bring before you this meeting tonight and its agenda. And we pray for our council, thanking you again for the good people gathered in this place who have been called and elected to undertake and be about the business of the borough of Telford and Wrekin. And we commend to your safekeeping our mayor, our speaker, the leaders of the council and the opposition, the members of this chamber, and the chief executive and all his staff. And we're grateful afresh for those friends who give so much of their time and effort in the service of others. Loving God, meet with us this night, so that we may know the satisfaction and assurance of effective service and the peace that this brings. Help us to resolve to use all of our time more effectively in the life of the service that we follow. And we ask in all the debate and deliberation of this council this night and other times and in other places, you will continue to grant wisdom, courage, compassion, respect and trust for and in each other. And this we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Okay, before we start, I understand there are a few councillors who are stuck on the M54 due to an incident. We hope they'll get here soon. But can I ask the Democratic Services Officer to confirm any apologies received in advance?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Nathan England and Councillor Terry Kiernan.
Thank you. Can I ask the Democratic Services Officer to confirm any declarations of interest received in advance, please?
We have none received.
Are there any declarations from the floor? Okay, we shall move on to item 4. Can I have a proposer to confirm the minutes from the previous meeting held on a Thursday, 13th January 2022, please?
Madam Speaker, I have a query on the minutes of the meeting I held on the 13th of January. Minute 169, first paragraph.
Councillor, could we have it seconded first, please?
Sorry. I didn't want people to agree for something which I think is totally incorrect.
Okay. It has been seconded. Could you?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Agenda item 4, which is page 5 in your pack, minute 169, the first paragraph. The leader's announcement said that the council will be applying the 1% adult social care precept as mandated by the government. I understand that that is a expected, discretionary, not a mandated increase. Should I request that the minute be amended to reflect the correct position?
Okay, if I could refer this for an answer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The minutes are meant to reflect the comments that were made at the meeting, and my understanding and recollection is that they are a correct record of what was said at the meeting. Therefore, my recommendation, Madam Speaker, is that there's no change required because it is a true reflection of what was said.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Speaker, would you like me to say that the leader was not telling us the truth?
It's not a debate.
This isn't a debate, Councillor. We should move on. And thank you both councillors. Councillor Overton. Before moving on to the substantive business on the agenda, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that we have a recorded vote on the agenda for items 11 and 12. I would also remind you that if you leave during an item of business, you will not be able to vote on that item. We do have a 10-minute break included on the agenda to allow for a comfort break. However, we have a long agenda, so if things appear to be extending before we reach that point, I will ask from the chair if there is a desire for a comfort break and would ask for a show of hands to indicate. Given the long agenda, the leader has agreed not to give a leader's speech. However, with agreement from all group leaders, an urgent motion has been tabled, so I'll shortly invite Councillor Davis to propose the motion. However, before I do, I will only be asking group leaders and deputy leaders to speak on this motion on behalf of their groups so that we can move on to the other items on the agenda. I will now invite the leader, Councillor Sean Davis, to propose the motion.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Usually at this point in the agenda, we hear one voice on behalf of the Council, but this evening we'll hear many voices at this point in the agenda, but with one clear message, a message to condemn the illegal and immoral actions of the Putin regime, and to resolve to do all that we can as a Council to support those people who are displaced from Ukraine and do all that we can to support our community, to support them. And only today, Madam Deputy Speaker, did a lorry full of clothing and equipment leave Telford to make its way to Ukraine. And I want to pay tribute to all of the community groups in our wonderful borough for all that they've done already to support the people of Ukraine and those in the surrounding areas. Madam Deputy Speaker, war within the European Union area or the European continent is something that we would have thought would be assigned to history, but sadly it is back on the continent. And we need our members of parliament from all political persuasions and from all areas of the country to stay united. And we ask, by virtue of this motion, for group leaders to contact our local members of parliament to ask that they pursue and support the government in pursuing all diplomatic, economic measures possible by the government to restrict the regime of Putin. We also, through this motion, Madam Deputy Speaker, express our support to NATO, the United Nations and world leaders in their efforts to bring this matter to a safe and successful conclusion. Madam Deputy Speaker, there is absolutely no justification for the actions of Putin and his cronies. And for too long, dirty money and dirty influence from Russia has flooded this country. And we must use this as a reset moment to rid ourselves of that influence, that money, from our society and from our civic life. And we must stay and remain united with our European friends, brothers and sisters, in ensuring that Putin cannot succeed. So on behalf of my group, and I'm sure on behalf of the whole council and borough, we propose this motion, our small way to mark this particular event in history. And we hope and pray with all that we have that this will come to a safe conclusion for the people of Ukraine, the people of Europe, and the people of the world.
Thank you. Would anybody like to second?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. No one present here this evening could have envisaged that such a motion would be necessary. The hourly news footage ensures that those of us not directly involved see the horrors of war and appreciate the heroism and bravery of the Ukrainian people who have the right to live in a free and democratic Ukraine. I and my group, and I'm sure everybody in this room, fully support the motion and all the sentiments behind it.
Could I ask Councillor Bill Thompson, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our group fully supports this motion and echoes the words and fully supports what the other two group leaders have said. I'd further like to go on to say that we need to support the Ukrainian people with as much as we can. We can't appease somebody like Putin for what he's doing because he'll just think he can do it elsewhere. But my heart also goes out probably to the vast majority of the Russian people who don't probably know fully what's going on and are probably in terrible circumstances themselves. So my heart goes to that country and the people that live there, and more importantly, for the people in Ukraine. We can't allow this to continue. Thank you.
Could I ask Councillor Adrian Lawrence?
Thank you, Speaker. I've got a very personal interest in this situation. My wife's Ukrainian, and my mother-in-law is at this time stuck in a basement just on the outskirts of Kiev. She's a blind lady, blind in one eye, has only got 15% vision in the other. So you can imagine how difficult that situation is. There's very limited food available and, what fate awaits her. So you can understand the upset that is causing. Ukraine's a peaceful country. It's a proper European country. It's emerged from the Soviet Union and has slowly been embracing democracy and freedom. So it's an exemplar for what should be the future of all those ex-Soviet republics. Unfortunately, that's not the case for Russia. Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons at the fall of the Soviet Union in an agreement with America, United Kingdom and Russia. And it gave up those weapons in exchange for a guarantee about its integrity, its territorial integrity. And of course, We can all see how shallow that guarantee is from Russia. They gave up the weapons that would have prevented or been a deterrent, and now they've had an invasion in which nobody's there helping them. In 2014, Russia invaded, but the world really didn't do very much about it, turned a blind eye, continued much as before. That was our opportunity to stop this aggression. Now we should have taken much more aggressive measures, much more serious sanctions at that time. That could have changed events, but unfortunately we didn't. And now we can all see the price that the world is paying for that. This was a forgotten war, but because of my family interest, I used to watch the Ukrainian news on a daily basis, and there was almost never a day passed without some soldier being shot or murdered in the Donbass region, but that was never reported by the BBC or any of the world press, hardly at all. But what I can say is we can do something. We're at Telford here. Okay, we're not involved in a NATO action, but there is things that residents can do in Telford, and Councillor Davis has hit it on the nail, absolutely. There are collections of gloves, hats, warm clothing, ex-military gear if you feel like that. It can be donated, and there are buses running from Telford to London and from London off to Ukraine even as we speak. The government website of the Bank of Ukraine has on it the account numbers of the military, the Red Cross and other services. So if you want to help the military effort, you can donate directly to them through their bank account. And if you want to help the humanitarian effort, you can do so through the Red Cross. Personally, I've sent money to both of those causes, and I would urge residents to do, even if it's a small thing, handing in a pair of gloves or an old pair of socks. Any little effort can make a difference. So I think you get the idea. But I'll just finish by saying, Slava Heroya, Slava Ukraina. That's glory to heroes, glory to Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Overton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think, as this motion shows, that we stand with Ukraine. It is times like these that we must all come together to condemn the invasion. As words have been said, most of the Russians probably don't support this conflict. It's one man, and hopefully the world will come together through NATO and the UN to resolve this conflict as soon as possible, to reduce the number of casualties that are taking place. And we've all seen the pictures of the humanitarian crisis that's happening on its borders. And as the leader said, it's great that we as a town and borough have come together to support our brothers and sisters in Ukraine with the donations that we've got. And hopefully the country, in times of crisis, we know the British resolve, we come together, and the country is coming together to support those people. But let's hope and pray that soon, rather than later, this conflict ends.
Before we move to the vote, Councillor Davis, do you want to say anything further?
Madam Speaker, I think that the way in which this motion was put together ahead of tonight's meeting, the conduct of all members in the debate shows the best of us. It shows that we have more in common than what divides us. Despite the other agenda items on the agenda this evening, I do hope that is not lost. And on behalf of all of us, I'm sure, we send our very best wishes and love to Councillor Lawrence's mother-in-law at this time, together with her neighbours and her fellow country people.
Can I have a show of hands in favour of the motion? That's unanimous, thank you. That is carried. Thank you, Councillor Davis. Moving on to the Mayor's announcements, item 6 on the agenda, I will now hand over to Mayor Councillor Amrit Dewar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to ask members to note the engagements undertaken since the last council meeting shown on this list circulated to the members. It has been a quiet start to the year due to the ongoing pandemic, but it has been a pleasure to be invited to attend a number of engagements over the last 2 months, including the first anniversary celebration of Inflata Nation at the Telford Town Shopping Centre and the official opening of the new Randall House at Dolly Town Hall in memory of late Councillor Malcolm Randall. Members may be aware that every year the Mayor of Borough of Telford and Wrekin traditionally holds a charity ball as their final event for their term in office. I am pleased to announce that I will be hosting my Masquerade Charity Ball on Wednesday, 30th March at the Telford Hotel and Golf Resort. Members will have received an invitation direct with the all proceeds raised going towards my 2 chosen charities, the Midland Air Ambulance and Telford Crisis Support. I would like to finish by saying that I am looking forward to continuing the remainder of my term in office and attending future engagements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dwyer. We now move on to item 7, public questions, and I can confirm that none have been submitted for this meeting. Next, we move on to item 8. We have one question. I would like to remind members that questions are circulated in advance and also shown on the screen. I wish to invite Councillor Dugmore to ask his question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question to the leader. When will the remaining Afghan refugees that after several months are still in temporary accommodation be moved to permanent accommodation?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Dugmore, for your question. Those who were evacuated from Afghanistan and placed by the Home Office in temporary bridging hotel accommodation across the country provided this country with immense service at high personal safety, and therefore this country owes so much to them. In terms of the question that is posed by Councillor Dugmore, this is not in the Council's control. Councillor Dugmore will undoubtedly be aware that those who are in such accommodation are placed there by virtue of the Home Office, and the Home Office will then provide onward destinations to those in the hotels. I can confirm that this council has permanently placed a number of Afghan families in permanent accommodation in Telford and Wrekin, and we continue to support those who remain in the hotels. But I do share, I believe, if I sense the emotion correctly, the frustration of the questioner about the fact that after so many months, the Home Office still have not moved a number of families from the hotels to permanent accommodation, despite the many offers from councils from all political persuasions up and down the country. I have therefore, together with the Cabinet Member for Stronger and Safer Communities, written today to the Home Secretary and the Secretary of State for Local Government to ask what urgent steps they will take to ensure that those Afghan brave men and women and children are housed in permanent and suitable accommodation as fast as is possible.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Dugmore?
Yes, Madam Speaker. So, with the potential arrival of Ukrainian refugees, do you agree that the current situation needs to come to a conclusion quickly, and that the council should act as quickly as it can, because a lot of the frustrations with the Afghan refugees in the hotels is that they're waiting for things like properties to be decorated. Somebody waited 3 months for that, which is something that could easily be resolved by the council.
I gently say to Councillor Dugmore, I don't think the pre-prepared supplementary question took into consideration the answer I gave. The council has provided permanent accommodation to a number of Afghan families that we've pledged to support. Those that remain in the hotels by virtue of the Home Office is because the Home Office haven't deployed them to other areas of the country yet. So it's not in the control of this council where they go next, how quickly that is, But what we have undertaken to do is support those families in the hotels whilst they're still there. He will know, and so will members of Parliament in Telford and Wrekin, that there was no consultation at all with the council as to the opening of the hotels here in Telford and Wrekin, and that it was done very much on a whim. And he will also be aware that the Public Accounts Committee just very recently exposed that some £3 million a day is being spent by the Home Office on hotel accommodation. So I gently say to Councillor Dugmore that I do hope that he will reflect on the inaccuracy of his assumptions in regards to this and maybe reflect on the supplementary question.
Thank you. We now move on to item 9, Cabinet decisions made since the last meeting of the Council. I would remind members that these should be questions of clarity only on items marked as key decisions on the report. All are key decisions on this occasion. And are there any questions of clarification, not debate, from the members, please? We now move on to item 10. I would like to invite Councillor Sean Davis to propose the recommendation.
I'd like to propose the recommendation to adopt the council plan, Madam Speaker.
Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a couple of comments to make. There is a claim on page 2 of the council plan that every resident has a decent place to live, and that statement I would question. It's nonsense to claim that no one in the borough has damp or mould problems, or are the homes of multi-occupancy in the borough, are all of them decent places to live? Are there no families in the borough where the children have to share a bedroom? Of course not. On page 5 of the council plan, it states, and I quote, 18 neighbourhoods are ranked among the 10% most deprived nationally for health, skills, employment and housing. This is after Labour has been in control of Telford and Wrekin Council for the best part of 50 years. It's hardly something to shout about. The millions of pounds spent on these neighbourhoods over the years have obviously been a complete waste of money. Madam Speaker, this is just another glossy brochure, vague promises that has little likelihood of being delivered, and that's if the last 50 years are anything to go by.
So, again, Councillor Dugmore, I'll just ask you to read the document again. In relation to the Decent Homes for All agenda, it says we will ensure that is the case. That is clearly our ambition as a council, and we will take enforcement action against those who don't provide that. So we were the first council in the country to secure a private landlord banning order. You don't congratulate the administration or the council staff for that. We build houses to rent as a council. You vote against the investment for New Place. We work closely with our registered social landlords to ensure that there are decent homes to be rented. You criticise those houses being built. You criticise and don't support the investment in Telford and Wrekin homes that brings houses back from the private landlord sector by taking back control of those homes and to provide decent houses to our residents. You don't vote for or support the enforcement investment that we put forward to ensure that our private housing letting team deals with those issues that are facing. So I'd ask you to look at the document and read it properly, and secondly, I'd ask that you, rather than jump to the natural conclusion of wanting just to criticise all the time, that you come up with A, some praise where it's deserved, and B, some solutions if you have any. In regards to your second point around neighbourhoods, firstly, I think residents in Telford and Wrekin will be amazed that you've just said that the investment in Telford and Wrekin neighbourhoods is a waste of time and money. That is absolutely astonishing from the Conservative leader of this council. And you talk down all the time the borough, and it's quite a shame. You also erase the 4 years that your own party was in charge of the council in your comment. I mean, I forget with difficulty the 4 years that you were in charge of the council and all the inactions, omissions and bad decisions that you made. And of course, as always, you attack the council but not your own government. Over that last 50 years, how many years has the Conservatives been in control of the country? Over the last 10 years, how many of those years have you been in control of the country? Of those years, how much money have you taken away from Telford and Wrekin Council? £130 million each and every year. And whilst our residents have the highest tax burden since the 1950s, they're sending more money off to Whitehall, yet less money in their town hall and less money in their streets and communities. It's a little bit rich even for Nigel Dugmore.
Can I just say there were other people to speak? If anybody doesn't have any objections, we'll come back to you. Could I ask Councillor Tim Nelson, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have no desire whatsoever to criticise the Council in the context of this plan, but a critique is a part of our job as opposition, and we would derelict in our duty if we did not apply a critique with an aim to try and improve a document or improve a plan. And secondly, I have no desire whatsoever to trash talk this borough in respect of educational attainment, which is what I want us to reflect on. And the reason is it's my home. I've been here nearly 30 years. My daughters were educated in the borough, one at a high school, one at a community school. So the educational attainment in the borough matters to me personally very greatly. The reason is that prosperity, and I want prosperity for our residents, comes from productivity. Productivity is based on skills and infrastructure, and skills hinge very largely on educational attainment. And to that end, the borough has quite rightly identified, to support its contention that there's been a strong track record of improving educational attainment, the statistic that NVQ level 4+ is at 30.4% of residents. Now, for members' information, that statistic is of age 16 to 64 people for the year 2020. I looked it up. And it's an increase compared to 2015, which was at 26.5% of 4%. However, the figure in 2016 was also 30.4%. So the actual performance has flatlined since 2016. That's the absolute level with regard to the borough, and increase. If we look at the relative performance of the borough, unfortunately, out of the 58 unitary authorities, the median level is 40% NVQ level 4+, the borough's at 30%, and we are 8th lowest. So there's a tremendous opportunity to improve. However, there is no objective in the plan to improve that value of NVQ 4+, and no written numeric objective that we can then measure against. And this is for the members and also the officers. We manage what we measure. And if we don't set a concrete target, we'll not achieve it. Quite separately, as far as residents are concerned, and educational attainment, what they want to know is about schools. And I don't know from this document whether we have seen a strong track record of improving edutainment in schools, in primary schools, reading, writing, calculation, in secondary schools, a hatful of GCSEs, no educational evidence in terms of exams at all. I don't know, it doesn't say. It might be better, it might be worse. It is not clear. The plan is aspirational regarding the future. That's a good thing. But it doesn't have the measures to objectively tell whether we've arrived at succeeding in the plan. And that is a weakness, and that's a critique I will apply. Thank you.
Could I call Councillor Bill Tomlinson, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I fully support most of the items that are in this local plan, and I'm sure that Councillor Healy and myself also share passionately the trees that we have in our borough and the green agenda that we share earnestly together. It's just the issue I've got, though, is the fact we really need to push the government, because we have got 12 million trees, there or thereabouts, under our control, and a third of them are suffering with ash dieback. So in the next 15 years, we could lose a third of all the trees that we have under this council's control. Now, a third of the trees, trying to cut them down and plant them, even though we are preparing for that as best as we can as a local authority, obviously I want that at the top of the agenda, because with global warming, we need every tree we can. I know we're putting out trees in some of the primary schools to celebrate the Queen's celebration, but this is 4 million trees we're looking to lose. And I would just really like that as pushed as top of the agenda as we could to protect both us now and for the future. Thank you.
Councillor Derek White, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the Leader of the Opposition actually said the truest words he's ever spoken in this chambers, and that is, for the best part of 50 years, Labour has been in charge of this council, and he's absolutely correct. Because the 4 years that they were in charge, they destroyed many of the best policies we've ever had. We had a huge housing scheme going up in Woodside, which was changing bad planning, bad housing, helping people get their own homes, helping to change the environment. But when they came in, they stopped the funding, and it died. And our partners, and there was English partnerships, there was Newtown Housing, there was Telford and Wrekin, the Housing Trust, whole remit. Because we couldn't put the money in, that partnership fell apart. And we could not carry on throughout the next estate, which was going to be Sutton Hill and Brookside and so on. And that would have provided us with an estate, all our housing estates, so much better. But they stopped it. And so they can hold their head up and say, we gave bad housing to the people in Telford.
Madam Speaker, in regards to Councillor Nelson's critique, I accept the critique, of course. We can always go further, we can always go faster, we can always be better. And I take those comments as constructively as I hope they are intended. In regards to the specifics, we've got 98% of good or outstanding primary schools in this borough, and I went to one of them, and I'm very proud to have been educated here in Telford and Wrekin, as are many people in this room and no doubt watching. And we have some of the best state-of-the-art secondary schools in Telford and Wrekin because of the Labour's Building Schools for the Future programme that refurbished and rebuilt every single secondary school in the borough, despite the fact that the Conservative government, the first act that they did was to slice that budget almost in half. And Councillor Wright, who was a Member of Parliament at the time, I congratulate him for the work that he did to safeguard and protect that investment into our borough, a legacy for generations to come. In regards to the question around NVQ qualifications, Councillor Nelson will be aware, no doubt, that for the last 2 years, because of the pandemic, it's not been possible to accurately record the attainment rates because the qualifications have not been set in the usual way, and we're looking at, for this summer actually to be the first year for a number of years where that is taking place. So we'll look to how that has changed and improved. And I'm looking forward to Councillor Nelson's support in terms of the investment in Station Quarter, which will see for the first time a level 4 and 5 indeed purpose-built building for education for the people of Telford and Wrekin, together with the support of the University of Wolverhampton and Telford College. We are absolutely ambitious and aspirational for our children and young people, and will deliver all that we can to support their futures. In regards to Councillor Tomlinson's question, Councillor Tomlinson absolutely understands and knows, I know from our conversations, that we are prioritising trees, and you're quite right to highlight the fact that we have got an issue like the rest of the country around dash IBAC, and we're looking to deal with that. And we are replacing far more trees than has been removed through that process, and we'll continue through the planning process to ensure that even those sites where trees cannot be planted, they can be planted off-site, so that we continue to protect our trees and infrastructure. And I look forward to seeing members support our investments in creating more local nature reserves than ever before, more green spaces protected than ever before, and the investment in those green spaces, because as residents, That is what we all enjoy, and those residents who are watching this no doubt do the same. Thank you. Oh, and I agree with every word that Councillor White said.
Can I have a show of hands in favour of the proposals, please? Can I have a show of hands against? Any abstentions? That's carried. We now move on to item 11. I would like to invite Councillor Ray Evans to propose the recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And before I start, can I take this opportunity to thank the many officers and Cabinet who've been involved in the production of the excellent suite of documents you have before you. Council, budgets are about choices. The choices this Labour administration made when it campaigned on its manifesto at the last election. The choices that we have made since being elected, and those that you've seen laid out in our budget for the coming years. A plan in which we choose to tackle the inequalities that exist in our communities. A plan to build a strong, clean economy that all our communities benefit from, and a plan that seeks to level up the very real differences between our communities, so that they are all resilient, healthy and prospering in a green and protected environment. Council, these are the choices that this administration has already made. And before you now is the Council's medium-term financial strategy and its supporting documents. The strategy tells you how the aims that you've seen set out in the business plan will be paid for. It demonstrates that we're a progressive council with ambitions to improve this borough and the lives of our residents by tackling the enduring impact of the government's sustained austerity programme and the pandemic. Council, the government's low prioritisation of local government, together with its policy of increasing the proportion of council tax services paid for by our residents in their council tax, has resulted in the amount of revenue support grant we receive falling from 50 million in 2013 to just over 10 million last year. But in spite of severe financial constraints during a prolonged period of austerity, and the increased demand for key services, I am proud to say that this Council has demonstrated a consistently strong track record of sound financial management, delivering nearly £134 million worth of ongoing annual savings within budget and with unqualified audit opinions for over 15 years. Let's be clear, this is a Council that knows what it's doing. Members, whilst this is the fourth year that the government has only managed to provide a one-year settlement, as a large, complex organisation delivering many essential community services and spending over £500 million a year, we need a plan for our services over a medium-term period. This administration's, and so this document lays out this administration's strategy for the coming 4 years to 2025-26. A strategy that prioritises protecting frontline services by continually looking for ways to make savings, by providing services differently, and by generating income. Due to our sustained effective financial management, this Council is able to propose making a number of significant investments during the life of this strategy, which will enable us to further protect, care and invest in our borough. These will include investing a further £660,000 in children's services next year and almost £7 million in adult social care services by 23-24. It's a total commitment to these two key areas of outstanding quality service of £90 million, and that's over 65% of this Council's net revenue budget. Furthermore, we will invest £10 million in affordable housing initiatives, an additional £20 million into New Place, our wholly owned company with the potential to deliver an additional 400 properties, providing homes for over 1,000 people and bringing our total portfolio to 880 units. The New Place investment portfolio has experienced strong capital growth. The net equity within its accounts totals £31 million, and since 2015 has delivered a cumulative net incremental income of £6 million, money which has gone to benefit our frontline services. This council is committed to investing in Telford's future, ensuring that the borough is an attractive place to live, work, learn and visit. So while other councils have focused on making cuts, neglecting growth and have stopped major developmental projects, we have chosen to continue to prudently invest to create jobs, safeguard the future prosperity of this borough and its residents. As part of our business-winning, business-supporting approach, where everyone benefits from a thriving economy, we are proposing to make a further £37 million investment into new property holdings within the borough, bringing new jobs from inward investors and helping to retain existing jobs in companies that would look to expand and maybe leave the area. The funding committed to date is anticipated to help deliver 1,000 new jobs and safeguard more than 250 jobs. Cumulatively, our choices to invest £53 million in our growth fund is estimated to have delivered a 5% return, which again will be invested into our hard-pressed frontline services. Over £35 million has been set aside for transport and highway schemes so that our residents can continue to enjoy one of the highest ranked road and transport networks in the country, unlike our neighbours. And we are proposing to create a £20 million capital investment fund. As a council, we have made choices to take a stance on climate change and ensuring that our residents have a clean environment in which to live. As you will know, we have recently been rated in the top 3% of councils in the UK for tackling climate change, and once again, Telford Town Park was recognised as one of the best in the country. As part of our ongoing commitment to climate change initiatives and environmental improvement, we are proposing to invest a further £8.5 million. Since 2009, this council has delivered savings total £134 million through its sound financial management. This report puts forward further proposals that would deliver further ongoing savings of almost £144 million by March 2024. Madam Speaker, this is a budget that puts the residents and businesses of this borough at its heart. Residents who, in common with the rest of the country, are facing enormous challenges with soaring inflation rates, rising taxes and freezes in benefits. Council, the government assumed that in their comprehensive spending review that all councils responsible for delivering adult social care services would implement a 2% general council tax increase plus a 1% adult social care precept. But we are a compassionate council. We are a multi-award-winning council. We are a well-managed council. And we are on the side of our residents. And that's why, at this time of unprecedented pressures, we are proposing to put those residents first by choosing to take the step of freezing our general council tax for the next 2 years, and given the increasing pressures and failure of the Conservative government to find a solution to adult social care problems, we will only apply the government's assumed 1% adult social care precept, which will equate to an average of 21 pence per week for most households. In so doing, we will be ensuring that Telford and Wrekin residents have, for the 5th year running, the lowest council tax across the whole of the West Midlands region and one of the lowest in the country, with the average council tax in Telford and Wrekin being more than 3% lower than that of the rest of the region. We are now to start these proposals at the beginning of January. Throughout the 4-week consultation period that followed, 94% of people who responded said that they were in favour with our plans, as were the Business and Finance and Audit committees, who voted unanimously to support it. So, members, it's time for each of you to make a choice. I invite everyone in this chamber, whatever their political persuasion, to put the needs of our residents first, and therefore approve the recommendations at item 3 of this report.
and thank you, Councillor Evans, for that fantastic budget presentation. This is a positive budget that I second on behalf of the administration, a budget that invests, that protects, that cares, that believes, that wants Telford and Wrekin to do well. £37 million more to protect and attract jobs for our borough. £13.5 million more improving our roads on top of the tens of millions of pounds that we spend each and every year as a council, despite the government cuts. Further £10 million providing funding for affordable homes. 4.2 additional investment to provide services for the vulnerable and older adults, rising to £6.9 million extra by 2023. £91 million of this budget we have in front of us this evening is ring-fenced for social care for adults and children. £91 million, Madam Speaker. £4 million to spend supporting our high streets, despite the fact that, according to the Leader of the Opposition, we've wasted that money. £4 million to do our bit to contribute to the fight against climate change. £3 million more for improving footpaths and cycle paths around our borough. £3 million more investing in our parks, our green and open spaces to make them fit for the future. £1.8 million for active travel and £1 million in top quality events for our residents, at the same time as being the only council in the country to pledge to freeze our council tax, not just this year, but next year too. And a council tax that is, as Councillor Evans says, the lowest in the region, one of the lowest in the country, and that will continue to be the same. And, Madam Speaker, no car park charges being introduced, unlike Shropshire, Conservative-controlled Shropshire. No hikes in charges, unlike Conservative councils. No green tax being introduced for our residents. And it's interesting, isn't it, that if you look at our council tax and you compare it to the highest in the region, if we were to increase our council tax to the highest in the region, our residents would pay £477 more each and every year. This is a council on the side of our residents. No alternative from the opposition parties, no amendments from the opposition parties, and I do hope that they will support this budget. If we as a council can't invest, if we as a council can't believe, if we as a council can't have confidence, if we can't protect and care for the place that we call home, then who can? I do hope that the government will follow our lead as a council, Madam Speaker, and invest in a successful, happy, decent borough, Telford and Wrekin, the place we call home.
Thank you. Could I go to Councillor Dugmore, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Here we have another Labour budget based on an ever-increasing mountain of debt. The figures speak for themselves, with council borrowing set to increase to over £500 million, with little prospect of it ever being paid back. Councillor Davis has hung a noose of generational debt around the necks of all Telford and Wrekin residents. His reckless spending has seen this council borrow hundreds of millions of pounds. His planned debts will rise to an unprecedented £563 million by 2026, which is over £7,000 for every home in the borough. It's like history repeating itself. If you remember the Blair-Brown government, I'm sure you all do. Here we have a Labour administration spending all the money they can find or borrow. The global financial markets have become unstable, and we, the taxpayers, have to pay it back for many years to come. Yeah, it's called austerity. Councillor Davis's reckless spending plans are simply unsustainable. He has no clear plan to repay this debt, and he's putting our residents on the hook for all of his borrowing. Of course, it won't be a problem for him. because he will be long gone before we even get the chance to pay it back. My sympathy goes out to the council officers who do a fantastic job in keeping the council's finances operational, yet have to find a way to finance the political demands of the administration. Well done, but I can assure you that a Conservative-led council will be easier to work for. Madam Speaker, the duty of the opposition is to ask the difficult questions and hold the administration to account, and that is what my group, at least, will continue to do. There is no alternative budget because we need to keep the attention on what's actually going to happen. So it's over to the administration. What's the plan? With interest rates rising and the global financial markets in turmoil, how will we start to pay back our debts? £232 million of it doesn't generate any income for the council. What will you sell off? Leisure facilities? Council properties? New place? What's it going to be? What's the plan?
Councillor Bill Thomason, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I share with some of the frustrations that the Labour group and also the officers have had in getting all the information they needed just to put this budget together, with a lot of the information coming late. I can't help think if we were looking to try and, I don't know, refurbish Boris's flat and we're coming up with plans for that, we'd have got the information and the cash a lot quicker. I'm also concerned with his chief of staff that he's just been employed, who wants to scale back government. Scale back government means cuts, cuts, cuts. Do we cut the NHS? Do we cut social services? Do we cut the defence budget? Where will it stop? We have had to spend, it calls an investment in our papers because it's more money going into it, in social services, both adult and children's. It's not really an investment. It's an additional cost to this local authority to support the most vulnerable in our society. People in either children or adult social services, particularly in adult social services, comes to mind, because these are vulnerable adults, which in our families we can all see that we have, that need care. We are an ageing population, not just in Telford or in Britain, but across the world. There will be more people that will need additional care. And who's going to pay for that care? It comes upon us to have to sort that care out. We're only being able to invest in part in that money because we're having to make cuts yet again next year and efficiency drives and generate more income through the investments that we've made. If it wasn't for those cuts, we'd be hard pushed, like most local authorities are up and down this country, to fund what is desperately needed by people to keep them living civilised lives. Think about that when you're looking at cutting back on government and making even further cuts to social services, or simply not funding it adequately enough. And that is not just this local authority. The LGA, supported by most Conservative groups up and down this country, are saying exactly the same thing. It shouldn't just be down to each local authority to fund that. There should be a national fund for it, and it should be funded fairly. We support in our group virtually all the investments, that are being made by this local authority, and borrowing against those investments, because otherwise those investments wouldn't be made. We are, though, concerned to some degree, and one of the questions that I have, it's a small one, so we are concerned with some of the expenditure we have, with some of the literature that's coming out to residents at the moment. This authority has got a great reputation for keeping residents informed with what is going on in its borough, and long may that continue. But to ask residents to pay for literature to come through to them on their doorsteps, which could be deemed as propaganda from this council, from a certain political grouping, is a bit rich. We in our party, if we're putting out propaganda, at least pay for it ourselves. The one thing we firmly support tonight, and probably would have supported the budget last time, is the fact of keeping the council tax down to a minimum. If we'd have made more efforts possibly last year to do that, we'd have found our way, which I know we deeply upset an awful lot of Labour Party members, and I fully apologise for upsetting anybody, but we would support this tonight. It's a great austerity going on out there now. We couldn't have dreamt of what's going on in terms of cost of living for everyone, and it's a motion on the agenda tonight. And I'm glad that this local authority is doing the best it can to try and keep the costs for individuals and residents that live here down to a minimum, while still remembering that we have to look after the most vulnerable, and the most vulnerable need to have those services paid for, which we have to, and that cost is growing. So I can think unreservedly, apart from a few items which I've just mentioned, and we can't fully support everything in this budget, but it will get our support tonight. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Councillor Adrian Lawrence, please.
Thank you, Speaker. Councillor Davis asked if we had praise for the Council, and I do have to offer praise for this year's financial document. It's certainly one of Ken's best. I don't agree with the contents of it and the policies, of course, but in terms of the work done, there's got to be a debt of gratitude to the finance team. There are things we can support in this budget, of course. It's never all bad. Your increase to overall council tax, keeping it to 1%, is welcome. You could have gone further and kept it to 0, but nevertheless, that is helpful in the circumstances. But we do have worries. Debt is piling up, as Councillor Dugmore said. If you think back to 2011, at the end of our administration, prudential borrowing at that time was 117.9 million, and the incoming Labour administration had a 100-day budget, and at that time you were concerned about the level of debt the council had, and you brought that down to 91.1 million. Now, the equivalent figure is 563 million, will be by 25-26. So just think about that. That is a huge, huge increase. Now, Councillor Bill Clements criticised and talked about, you know, the different budgets over the period he was involved, and he used to talk about good debt and how borrowing to invest was, you know, a good thing, and there's something in that. But look at your figures. You're borrowing £215 million since 2011 through to 2025-26, which has no return at all. So that is borrowing to spend. You've invested in highways, as you call it, but you're still paying the interest on there. Those highways need to be regenerated again, repaired again, but you borrowed the money and you still owe it. So each year we've seen more and more proposals come forward. But the question is, when is enough enough? Every year you're borrowing more and more, and every year you refer to the ratio of finance cost to debt, and you've shown graphs of how much we compare to other authorities, and it's currently 7.33%, and it's forecast to rise to 9.5%. But what's the upper limit? If it doubles again and doubles again, there'll be 40% of our budget spent on debt. That's just unmanageable, isn't it? I asked Ken Clark at the scrutiny what the ceiling was, how high debt could go, and the answer was there is no ceiling because there's no limit to what you're prepared to borrow. So I have to say this is sadly a political budget. It's a short-term budget, a short-sighted budget that leaves Telford and Wrekin overstretched and exposed to these increases in inflation and, of course, interest rate rises as there inevitably will be. There is a legacy that Sean is leaving us, but, of course, it's not the legacy that he wants everybody to hear. It's the legacy of debt which will be around our necks for whoever knows how long. I've called him Sean of the Debt before, and I know he didn't like that, and I can understand why, but it's another Sean of the Debt budget, and I just can't understand why he's allowing debt to spiral up, and it's going to be a burden for our children and grandchildren for decades to come. Thank you.
Before we go on, can I remind councillors that if you leave during the debate, you will not be able to vote on this matter. I'd like to remind you that we do have a scheduled break coming up shortly. Could I ask Councillor Stephen Reynolds, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As Chairperson of the Business and Finance Scrutiny Committee, I personally want to thank all the members of the Business and Finance Scrutiny for attending the meetings regarding the Council budget proposals, and to thank personally also the Director of Finance, his team and the Cabinet Member for Finance, Governance and Customer Service for providing a comprehensive budget proposal that has seen for the 5th consecutive year the council rates remaining the lowest in the Midlands. The council received for 22-23 a one-year settlement from the government, and because of this there still remains uncertainty over the medium-term financial outlook for the council. However, we are assured by the finance directors and the council that his team that the situation over the coming year and beyond will be monitored closely to ensure our finances and budget are adhered to. Myself and the committee were pleased to see the proposed freeze of the council tax over the next 2 years, and the evident continued support for businesses and residents in the borough, especially at this critical time following the easing of COVID-19 restrictions, as well as the considerable pressures of the cost of living increases and inflation. The proposals highlight the continued need for the increase to adult social care, and the committee accepted and understood the need to take on the 1% assumption for the adult social care precept to try and supplement the adult social care budget of 53 million for 22-23 and spending an extra 5.5 million to look after the most vulnerable children and adults in Telford and Wrekin, bringing the total budget for this year to over £90 million next year. The committee also recognised the need for housing investment in New Place and other affordable housing initiatives, amounting to £30 million on new homes to rent and buy. The Business and Finance Scrutiny Committee unanimously supported the proposed budget and hope tonight to see the same cross-party support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Culdup-Sahota, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support the budget, but I don't intend to do through every line. But I would like to sort of touch on just one aspect of the budget, which is, to many of my constituencies quite important, and that one is the Councillors' Pride Fund. And Tesco used to say years ago, it's perhaps the little things in life that counts. And this is one of those things. Over the years, the Councillors' Pride Fund, it used to be 2,500, now it's gone up to 5,000 this year, and I understand that it might even go up further next year as well. Anyway, along with our parish council, town council actually, so we are not a parish anymore at the Dorley, we are a town council with a match funding with the same amount. What we have done is invested myself and Sean Davies into all kinds of small things. And I'm going to give some examples now, Madam Speaker. Some of those, what we have done is we've given £1,000 to St Leonard's Church to illuminate the whole building from the outside. So like the Iron Bridge, we do it out there, or the South Water. The building, the St Leonard's Church, is is of a historic importance with a link to Thomas Telford, and the locals are quite proud of it. So we thought it was a sort of a good idea to give money. And also we've given £1,000 to Lady Grove School, so the children can have a running track, so a bit of exercise every morning. They do about a mile for the. And also, while I'm on the school, £500 to our primary old school, so that 6-year children can go on a trip. And on top of that, we have given thousands of pounds, that's Sean and I, and the parish council, to improve the looks and the environment of our ward, such as the hanging baskets. We invested a lot in it, and we invested in thousands and thousands of those bulb plants, which if you go around these days, you will see they will be blooming just about this time as well. So like I said, I understand that this Pride Fund is going to go up, and thanks to Ray Evans, and I hope keep it coming, and we welcome it in Mellinsley and Dollybank Ward. Thank you.
So it is about
he was talking about the Pride Fund, which is within the budget.
It's not. If she wants to speak, does she want to indicate to speak?
Would you like to indicate to speak?
So, Shirley.
I'm afraid we've got other people before you, but would you like to...
Move on to Shirley.
Can I stop you there? I'm sorry. It is within the budget. Could we move on to Councillor Shirley Reynolds, please?
Thank you, Speaker. I welcome this budget. Throughout what has been a very difficult decade of cuts, we have continued to protect, care and invest in our borough. We all know in our own lives how difficult it is to plan when we're unsure of our finances or dealing with the soaring cost of living crisis. So for ourselves, without any long-term settlement from this government, it's been even more challenging. But in spite of this, we continue to invest in our borough. We continue to protect. We are investing a further £660,000 in children's safeguarding within our outstanding children's services. We continue to care. We are increasing the investment in our exceptional adult social services by a further £4.9 million this year. This is the difference a Labour council makes. It's deeds, not words. We are on the sides of our residents. We continue to invest with capital projects in education for school expansion as part of our planned increase in pupil places. Last week I was delighted to announce a new primary school in Allscott, just one of our school expansion plans, with over £31 million being invested in our school estates across the borough.
What do you do?
Our administration has ensured we're in a safe and secure position through financial prudence and sound investments. We deliver yet again the lowest council tax in the West Midlands, while still delivering excellent services. And this isn't just my judgment, it is the judgment of our residents in the recent resident survey. And this certainly isn't something that can be said for some of our neighbouring authorities. The government assumption that councils will increase council tax by the maximum permitted in an effort to prop up their gross underfunding of adult social care is unfair on our residents, who are facing a national insurance hike, which was supposed to be for that purpose. Our residents are facing increases every day. Food costs to provide for their families, fuel prices at the pumps, heating bills at home. Some of our families, sadly, have had their incomes cut by the removal of £20 a week in universal credit. This has meant £1,000 being taken from families most in need in Telford and Wrekin. The Nottingham Institute says that over 15 million people in the UK live in dire straits. 23% of the population live in poverty. And poverty means cold, damp, overcrowded homes. It means not having regular, nutritious food to eat. And for the 21st century, that is appalling. But we are on the side of our residents and continue to help wherever we can. I'm pleased this Labour administration is freezing our council tax for the next 2 years, likely to be the only council in the country to pledge to do this. I'm proud of the work of the Labour administration. We're providing excellent, high-quality homes for residents. we're ensuring quality employment through inward investment, providing award-winning parks and green spaces, creating a better borough, one that residents can live, work and raise a family in, safe in the knowledge that a Labour council is on their side and knowing we will continue to protect, care and invest for them. I'd like to thank the officers and the Cabinet member, Councillor R A Evans. Our team working together has produced a sound budget, even in the face of severe cuts of over 130 million. So I'd like you all to thank Team Telford, and I fully support this budget.
Thank you. Councillor Andy Burford, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you would expect, I want to address the issue of adult social care within this budget report. Firstly, I applaud the Council's continued commitment to keeping pace with the demands on the budget for social care. These demands are partly due to well-recognised demographic changes, including the rise in the number of older people with dementia or complex needs. The additional 5.1 million that you see in the budget for next year is possible because of our sound financial management. Unlike many, we are managing at the moment to keep our heads above water in terms of day-to-day requirements, but reforming the system and giving care staff the pay, conditions and job prospects that they deserve is beyond all local councils. But let's take a step back. The Prime Minister promised to fix social care. He hasn't. What he has done is raise national insurance, itself an unfair tax. Social care's share of the levy will be 5.4 billion over the next 3 years. Sounds a lot, doesn't it? But until you work out what it boils down to. The majority of this sum will be used to cover the cost of the cap on care funding. This leaves an amount for reform and investment in frontline services of less than 3% per year, less than the current rate of inflation. Let's hear less about how much the government is spending and more about whether it is sufficient and about how it compares to the sums of money squandered and dubiously allocated during the pandemic. It is a crime bigger than Partygate that this country cannot bring itself to properly fund services for the most vulnerable in our country. So on to the issue of the government imposed, mandated, expected, assumed. They certainly built it into all their calculations, 1% adult social care precept. We cannot afford to turn down even this relatively small sum. We know that our providers are in a very difficult position, unable to recruit because of the levels of pay that they're able to offer, and unable to make their books balance unless they receive more money from us, which we don't have. Don't take my word for it. Let me quote the Conservative leader of Somerset Council. It is becoming increasingly clear, he says, that funding allocated through the new health and care levy is likely to be insufficient by some margin. Or the Conservative Cabinet member at Windsor Maidenhead, these proposals have the potential to destabilise the entire council. The worst thing is none of this additional cost is about improving services or quality of life for people. So let me ask the Conservative members here, do they think in this context that we should be refusing the government's 1% precept? Secondly, do they agree that with their Conservative colleagues elsewhere that adult social care is far from fixed? And will they do all they can to persuade their government to do what they said they would do? We are doing our best for our residents. We need this government to stick to their promises. Thank you.
Councillor Lee Carter, please.
Thank you, Speaker. I wholeheartedly welcome and support this budget. I've been in a position where I've presented budgets on behalf of the administration, and I've heard many a time how the opposition here deny stuff, distort reality and just make stuff up in general. I'm intrigued by the member for Muxton's comments that he attended Scrutiny, supported the budget but didn't support the content. What were you applauding? The style of the paper or the colour of the paper it was written on? That's right up there with the classics that we've heard from that side before about not building a solar farm because sun doesn't shine enough in Telford, and also that we can fix all of the roads by spending £25 million less, right up there with those classics. I mean, come on folks, let's be less hypocritical about this. We should be proud. We're all elected from our various wards to be proud of those wards and represent those wards with pride and do our best for residents right across the borough. Not only does this budget demonstrate a cast-iron focus on the financial discipline, which has been a hallmark of our administration for over a decade, it also demonstrates an unwavering commitment by this Labour administration to invest in what matters most to our residents across each and every part of our borough. And ultimately, that is what matters most. I talk about hypocrisy. This budget will see investment into highways, footways, cycleways, street lighting across every part of the borough. I read on Facebook community pages how members opposite, and I won't name them individually, I could do, will quite often urge the councils to spend money fixing issues within their wards, and we do that rapidly. Yet they will today abstain or vote against a budget that provides extra investment to deal with those issues. I see members opposite demand more residential parking spaces, safer routes to school, us to resolve drainage issues, whether you're in an urban or a rural part of the borough, to fix some of the structures that have been around a long time and need fixing in both the newer and older parts of the borough, some of those parts that they represent. If you vote against or abstain from this, you're voting against investment in all of those things. This budget will provide investment into retaining existing business, attracting new business, creating conditions for new jobs, attracting new inward investment, making sure that our borough retains its position as one of the most outward-looking, progressive, successful areas for economic development in the whole country. That is something we should all be proud of. That investment has seen the delivery of things like Nye Park. It's seen the delivery of things like T54, investment in Halesfield and the South Borough, right across the borough. I've seen members opposite even claim credit for things like Nye Park and the invention of Nye Park. Yet today, if you vote against or abstain against this budget, you are voting against investment into the continued expansion of Nye Park. This budget, 2 more minutes, this budget will also see investment into our high streets, investment into housing in each and every part of our borough. If you vote against or abstain, you're voting against that investment. Let's make that quite clear. So for once, let's put the hypocrisy aside. Let's stop denying things. This is a budget with purpose. It's aspiration backed by action, and I totally support it.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next councillor, I have 3 people left to speak. I'm closing the list now. Could I ask Councillor Stephen Bentley, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I found this debate very interesting, very laudable. And again, I would like to send my appreciation to all the officers for their hard work in putting together the budget. Developing a budget on which we can all agree is far from easy, but usually this is achieved using known parameters and factors. However, especially within the past 3 months, circumstances and events beyond control of any government, economic stability worldwide has been disrupted. No one can predict, or even attempt to predict, a volatile situation may continue to affect institutions like councils, governments, households. Therefore, I would ask members to consider caution, given current circumstances, that this budget be accepted as an emergency measure with a review in 3 months.
Thank you. Councillor Caroline Healy, please.
Thank you, Speaker. I absolutely support this budget. I particularly welcome the investment that we're making in terms of our actions to address the issues of climate change and also investment in our green spaces. This is a positive budget and you know, we have to deliver for our communities. That's what we want to do. I actually left local government as an officer because my job became one of going out to public meetings, telling people we would be cutting their service by 50%, but that it would be better because that's what I was told to say. And I could not continue to do that. I didn't feel good about myself because it wasn't the best thing that we were doing. Here, we try to keep our services going and we do everything we can to do that. And in terms of how we finance that, I mean, you only need to look at the graph in section 7.3 to see the massive decline in the revenue support grant. That is why we have to look at alternative ways, because we have got this situation with a government that really, I think, wants to see the end of local government and see the end of public service. Yeah.
Regional government, do you remember it?
Love, I'm not your love. But I would just say, I mean, it is also a budget that has been assessed that there's a robustness statement there with it. In relation to issues of debt, I know that my colleague will address some of those concerns. But obviously, the budget does include repayments around some of the things that we're investing in, like New Place, like the property investment portfolio, as well as the interest, so that that debt is repaid over the lifetime of the asset. This is about having assets that have that value against the actual original investment. And in terms of the question that was made to the Director of Finance, I think the answer to that has been taken entirely out of context. The question was around a ceiling of debt. The answer given was around the fact that there is no ceiling set by CIPFA or the government. It's not a policy decision by this administration. This is the answer that was given to that question was in relation to the actual legislation and the rules that we work by in terms of those finances. And just one final thing that I just think has been quite distasteful in this debate from some members is that when we set a budget, we work together, and as a cabinet, we take collective responsibility for the papers that we bring to you. And I think the personal attacks on the leader of the council are unfounded and really are unprofessional and do not demonstrate the values by which we should behave.
Thank you. Before I call the next person, I would like to remind councillors and members, please, to address people respectfully, if you could. Thank you. Could I call Councillor Derek White, please?
When this government came into power, the national debt was approximately £38,000 per resident. It now sits at £78,000 per resident. And it's rising by £5,170 per second. How dare the Leader of the Opposition talk about piling debt on our residents when his government has piled thousands and thousands on the backs of the whole of this country. The money that is being spent in Telford is being spent in housing, infrastructure, it's being spent on a new centre, it's been spent on a solar farm, it's been spent on so many areas, and most of those areas are actually producing profit. So much so is that Shropshire and many, many other councils across this country are following our example, because we've been told, act like a business. And that's exactly what we are doing. We're acting like a business, but with the money supporting the people that we represent, and that's the people on the Hill. On Sutton Hill, we've had a huge change and a lot of work being done there. And that's on Woodside, Brookside, every other estate in this area. Massive changes to the areas. That's bringing back people's pride in the places they live in. We have got houses up in those areas that are being occupied by private landlords who are making a huge killing of our residents. And we're going to try and change that. It has to be changed, because that's costing us money as well. It's now time to actually stop moaning and start supporting what is effectively a Conservative policy of actually investing in your community. Borrowing to make money, borrowing to make sure that we've got the services for the future. And that's what we need, and that's the way we're going to operate, and I support this budget 100%.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, do you have anything to add?
Madam Speaker, if I may. I do often remind my fellow Cabinet members that it's hard to be in opposition against us, and perhaps we should give a bit of slack. However, I've got to say, it's not only history that repeats itself. It's the opposition with this question about debt. And I understand that's a perfectly valid question. But how many times do we have to give you sound answers to this? Within those documents you've been given, Appendix 10, you've got a graph showing how we fare against other councils. You've got the Chief Financial Officer's robustness statement. You've got prudential indicators and a Treasury management report, all saying that this council has robust and strong and effective management processes. Our debt repayments in 2021-22 accounted for 8.2% of the net revenue budget, including payments to Shropshire in respect of pre-unitary authority debt. This compares to Birmingham, who pay out 29% of their revenue budget, and the average unitary authority, which is 10.4%. So you can see that we are lower than that. The new proposals for capital programme will cost the revenue budget £1.8 million out of a total spending of £427 million. The majority of our loans are locked into longer-term fixed-term rates, and these are low rates of around 1%. Funding capital assets from borrowing ensures that the cost of assets is charged to the revenue budget account over the useful life of the asset. Clearly, if all assets were paid for directly from the revenue budget, current taxpayers would be paying up front for assets that would still be in use for many years to come. These documents tell you the Council has a general fund and a special fund balances as safeguards against unforeseen costs. These amount to over £20 million. Finally, so that we are all on the same page and hear the same thing, the fixed value of our assets is £735 million, more than half of which generate income for this council. Against this, we have a debt of £281 million. So in easy terms, the value of the asset is over 2.5 times greater than the debt outstanding. Or put another way, it's £5,000 equity for every household in our borough. Council, I think most of us would be pretty happy if your borrowing had repaid you like that. Ultimately, Madam Speaker, the question has to be that the opposition must ask itself, and perhaps answer for us, if you're uncomfortable with our borrowing, what would you cut?
The legislation sets out that there should be a recorded vote for this item. I will ask the monitoring officer to take the recorded vote. Please can you indicate your vote when your name is called?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Councillor Bentley. Councillor Blundell. Sorry, Councillor Blundell. Please. 4. Councillor Boylan. Councillor Burford. Councillor Burrell. Councillor Callier. Councillor Eric Carter. Councillor Lee Carter. Councillor Cook. Councillor Davies. Councillor Dugmore. Councillor Eade. Councillor Arnold England, sorry. Councillor Evans. Councillor Ian Fletcher. Councillor Veronica Fletcher. Councillor Goff. Councillor Greenaway. Councillor Healy. Councillor Holt. Councillor Hoskin. Councillor Yanker. Councillor Jawar. Councillor Jones. Councillor Lavery. Councillor Lawrence. Councillor McClements. Councillor Mehta. Councillor Middleton. Councillor Murray. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Offland. Councillor Overton. Councillor Priest. Councillor Gilly Reynolds. Councillor Shirley Reynolds. Councillor Steve Reynolds. Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Sahota. Councillor Scott. Councillor Seymour. Councillor Charles Smith. Councillor Malcolm Smith. Councillor Karen Tomlinson. Councillor Bill Tomlinson. Councillor Turley. Councillor Watling. Councillor Wennington. Councillor White. Councillor Wright. Madam Speaker, that's 36 in favour, 12 against, 1 abstention, so that's carried.
Thank you. That is carried. May I suggest at this point, would anybody like a comfort break? If you'd like to show your hands.
Yeah, go for it.
Yep. I'm going to call a comfort break.
10 minutes.
10-minute comfort break. Thank you. Seats, please.
Have something to pull and push.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we suggest that wheel next time?
It's very heavy, absolutely.
It's solid wood, isn't it? Yeah.
No worries. This is the last time I think we sit in this one.
Yeah. See, go around with Haribo now. Sorry, go around with Haribo. So don't forget the minutes. Yeah. Looks like it. I think that's everyone. Yep. Okay, councillors, welcome back. It has been pointed out to me that earlier, inadvertently, we missed a vote on the minutes of the previous meeting. We have had it proposed and seconded, so can we move to a vote?
That's carried.
That's carried. Thank you very much.
Still in the meeting, was that?
So,
Yeah.
item 15.
Should I do that? No.
Item 12, sorry.
Item 12 is on there. We now move on to item 12. I would like to invite Councillor Ray Evans to propose, I can speak, the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The council tax levels must be approved by full council. This report sets out the formal resolutions to determine the levels of council tax for Telford and Wrekin Council for 22-23. The levels of tax take account of the requirement of Telford and Wrekin Council, the West Mercia Police and Crime Commissioner, Shropshire and Wrekin Fire Authority, and the various town and parish councils. If you're interested in the detail, you have it before you. Madam Speaker, I move.
Thank you very much, Councillor Overton. Are there... Yeah. Are there any questions or comments, please? No. Right, we shall move to the vote. The legislation sets out that there should be a recorded vote for this item. I will ask the monitoring officer to take the recorded vote. Please, can you indicate your vote when your name is called?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Councillor Bentley. Councillor Blundell. Councillor Boylan. Councillor Burford. Councillor Burrell. Councillor Callier. Councillor Eric Carter. Councillor Lee Carter. Councillor Cook. Councillor Davies. Councillor Dugmore. Councillor Eade. Councillor Arnold England. Councillor Evans. Councillor Ian Fletcher. Councillor Veronica Fletcher. Councillor Goff. Councillor Greenaway. Councillor Healy. Councillor Holt. Councillor Hoskin. Councillor Yanker. Councillor Jawar. Councillor Jones. Councillor Lavery. Councillor Lawrence. Councillor McClements. Councillor Meta. Councillor Middleton. Councillor Murray. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Offland. Councillor Overton. Councillor Priest. Councillor Gilly Reynolds. Councillor Shirley Reynolds. Councillor Steve Reynolds. Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Sahota. Councillor Scott. Councillor Seymour. Councillor Charles Smith. Councillor Malcolm Smith. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Karen Tomlinson. Councillor Bill Tomlinson. Councillor Turley. Councillor Watling. Councillor Wennington. Councillor White. Councillor Wright. That's unanimous, Madam Speaker. It's carried.
Thank you. That's carried. Now, at this point, we did have a scheduled break, and obviously we have just had one. So may I recommend, if everybody agrees, that we have another break just before the motions? No? Very well, we will move on. Item 14 is recommendations from boards and...
Councillor Fletcher was indicating.
Councillor Fletcher.
On one item, then
That's fine.
a duty to ask to break.
That's fine.
Nobody can be excluded from any of the motions.
That's absolutely fine, Councillor Fletcher. We will come back to it. Thank you. Item 14 is recommendations from boards and committees. 14.1 is a recommendation from the Audit Committee. I would like to invite Councillor Charles Smith to propose the recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At the meeting held on the 25th of January, in accordance with our terms of reference, the Audit Committee considered the Treasury Management Update report for the current year and the Treasury Management Strategy for next year and approved them for consideration by full Council. The report forms part of the package of medium-term financial strategy, the budget papers already considered earlier in this full Council meeting. The Audit Committee voted in favour of the recommendation, and as full Council have already approved the MTFS. I see little need for any further debate on this item, and therefore move the report.
Thank you very much. I would like to say I'm happy to second that. Do we have any questions or any comments, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. As I stated earlier, we have major concerns regarding the levels of council borrowing and the lack of planning to pay the accrued debt. The overall strategy is one of managing debt, not reducing it. Recent events have shaken the financial world, and as the Treasury Management Strategy was drawn up several weeks ago, it should be revised to take into account the financial situation that's engulfing the world. The implications could be quite severe and would have a detrimental impact on the Council for years to come. I therefore think that this strategy should be revised before it's approved.
Could I call Councillor Bill Tomlinson, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hear the words that Councillor Dugmore has just mentioned, which can sound as being sensible. However, it's often approved, our Treasury Management reports by the Auditor itself as being robust and is seen as being one of the best or better Treasury reports that we have. It has already been mentioned previously that most of the interest that we're having to pay on this is fixed. So even though there is turmoil in financial markets, virtually all, most of all the borrowing, not virtually all, most of all our borrowing is already fixed and therefore not going to be affected by increases in interest rates. Thank you.
Councillor Charles Smith.
Well, I fail to understand why the opposition should actually query the audit committee's report. It was there for it being looked at. The auditor was Council auditor was quite happy with us doing that and was quite happy what we'd got. And therefore, the Audit Committee recommend to full Council that we pass this report.
Yep. Thank you. All those in favour, please show your hands. All those against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Item 14 is recommendations from the boards and committees. 14.2 is a recommendation from the Council Constitution Committee. I would like to invite Councillor Charles Smith to propose the recommendations.
This is the problem of being a vice chair and chairs are absent. Following the Council Constitution Committee meeting of the 17th of February, the draft constitution is set before you. The committee agreed the recommendation of the cross-party working group in respect of the suggested changes. The immediate changes are largely administrative and reflect the way in which the council now works. The committee is going to undertake a more in-depth review over the coming 12 months, and the committee agreed the draft as presented and recommends that full council adopts the new draft constitution. Please note, it is actually a tidying up of what we've got, the way we work now.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Any comments? Councillor Dugmore.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I mean, the vast majority of it is fine and is acceptable. However, I do have an issue with the part that should a member miss part of an agenda item for whatever reason, they cannot vote on the issue. This doesn't account for anybody who might have medical conditions, or it could be for a variety of different reasons. I do think that it's a bit undemocratic, dictatorial and patronising. If the rules applied to Westminster, Parliament would grind to a halt and wouldn't be able to function. The council should respect its members and have the framework in place so that elected members can perform their duties to the best of their abilities.
Are there any other comments? Can I return to Councillor Smith, please?
Well, perhaps Councillor Dugmore should have a word with his members on that committee, on the small working group, in Fletcher and myself. It was actually pointed out to us that some people miss meetings. For instance, in a planning meeting, if you're halfway through an application and somebody leaves it, they've got to be the full weight of evidence, both for and against. If they can't do that, then they're excluded from taking a vote. And that should apply in most of our things tonight. It certainly would apply to the budget meeting, where we've just had. If you're not here to listen to all the debate, you shouldn't vote. And that's what that's there for. And I suggest that Councillor Dugmore has a word with his own side, because they didn't disagree.
We shall move to the vote. All those in favour, please show your hands. All those against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Item 15 is notice of motion. Item 15.1, can Councillor Richard Overton move the motion as detailed in the agenda?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you can see, the motion's before you on the screen. We have a perfect storm brewing across the country. The cost of living crisis has inflation, it's 5.5%, and our household shopping budgets increase. This is the food we put on our tables. Families in our borough are seeing rising energy prices that they will struggle to pay already, and rising fuel prices at the pumps. Fuel vital to help them take their children to school or go to work. And what did the government do? They propose £150 off people's council tax in certain bands. This won't even cover 1/5 of some families' rising energy bills, or a forced loan on households, spreading the cost but not reducing it, just extending the pain. This Conservative government is continuing to fail our residents. This crisis was there for us all to see, but what do they do and what do they propose? They scrapped the £20 uplift for those on universal credit. This includes working people. They're increasing national insurance by 10% and they're freezing personal tax allowances, which will see more people pay more income tax than ever before. The help they propose for families and residents in Telford and Wrekin is a drop in the ocean to all the issues that will be coming before them through their pockets. It was so easy for this government to give dodgy contracts to their mates and waste billions of taxpayers' money, but they won't do anything that would really help the residents and families of our town. A windfall tax on the profits of these energy firms would have been one way, but I'd guess this government wouldn't like to upset any potential donors to the Tory party. This motion is about standing up for our residents, and I mean all of us in this chamber, together being on their side, understanding their real concerns and struggles, and sending a message to the government and to our two MPs, more needs to be done to help households. There is a crisis coming. Use the power you have to do something positive rather than letting off fraudsters and defending rule breaking in Downing Street. I move.
Is that seconded, please?
I'll second that motion, but reserve my right to speak and would like to speak.
Thank you. Could I ask if there are any comments, please? Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Sometimes some of these motions would be a lot easier to vote for if we did away with the silly political rhetoric.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Speaking on the motion. Councillor Dugmore.
Oh, I do. You won't like it. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The administration's favourite topic, complaining about the government. What did you complain about during the last Labour government? All that borrowed money being spent willy-nilly with no plan to pay it back. Does that sound familiar? This motion complains about more people paying income tax. Yet that is a direct consequence of wages rising, thanks to the government. There's absolutely no mention of the increase in the minimum wage, which is coming in next month. Spooky that, isn't it? Madam Speaker, we have, as a council, we have no direct input into any of these issues raised in the motion. We would be better focused on what we can do to help our residents, particularly with the current situation in Ukraine, which will make the situation even worse. Madam Speaker, there's been much hype over the supposed council tax freeze. Well, like most proposals by this administration, it's not as generous as it seems. The freeze in general council tax will save the average Telford and Wrekin council taxpayer 21p a week. To put that into context, it will take over a month to save enough to buy a Greggs sausage roll. Or put another way, it'll take 13.5 years to make up the £150 heating rebate that the motion states is just a drop in the ocean. So, Madam Speaker, who is helping out more, the government or the council?
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Then I return to Councillor Reynolds, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The coming weeks and months are decisive for families across our borough. Not only is there a cost of living crisis, but there are also a series of devastating tax rises that will hit our working families hardest. For months, inflation has got out of control, the cost of a weekly food shop is up, gas and electricity bills are skyrocketing, and that is the reality which seemingly the opposition tonight are not recognising. That is the reality which I'm experiencing and the reality which the residents in my constituency, in my area, are experiencing. If you go and speak to residents, that's what they will tell you, because that is what is reality. So far, the government's answer is a devastating increase in national insurance contributions for working people and businesses. The government is not alone in burdening families with greater tax rises. Our Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner, the Conservative-led Fire Authority and Conservative parish councils are telling local families that they must pay more. I'm proud that this Labour Council is taking the bold step to freeze council tax. We're able to take decisive action because of our sound financial management of local services, our investment into our market towns and into our communities. We are worried for our residents, and we're horrified that anybody in our borough is having to choose between food and fuel. But at least this council, Labour Council, acts. For over 11 years, we've seen the mismanagement and under-regulation of energy markets and an over-reliance on gas with slow progress on renewables, nuclear and the greater insulation of our homes, leaving bills mounting and families unable to keep their homes warm and food on the table. With European and global security threatened by war, the cost of living will only increase. Conservative politicians are failing our country, negating their responsibility to intervene, and simply cannot tackle this cost of living crisis, either because they are incompetent or because they don't want to act. I second this motion.
Thank you. I recognise that I have had some indications to speak, but we have already moved on to the proposer and seconder. Councillor Overton, would you like a right to reply?
It won't take long. It's sad, really, that unfortunately the members opposite, who are elected by people of this borough to serve them, think it's easy, that the struggles that they're going through, that they've just got one speaker who's basically just tried to defend his government, who wiped billions away from fraudsters, but wants to give £150 to families across Telford and Wrekin. Just when energy bills are going up £700–800, they think £150 is a great thing from the Conservative government. These people are elected to serve every resident that they represent, and all they do is sit on their hands and start attacking this council, who has a manifesto commitment of protecting and caring and investing. We do all we can across this borough to support these families, some of them the most vulnerable families. And when we put a motion together calling on the government to do more, they have a go at us. Well, one person does. I don't know if the rest back him up, because he just seems to want to talk on everything. But this is a cost of living crisis. Our families deserve us to show their support and right to the government and our MPs to stand up for them, not sit on their hands and just be PPSs or go away to Ukraine or go away to other countries making money. They want their MPs to do something for them. And unfortunately, we want the opposition here to do something for them as well.
Thank you. We are moving to the vote, sorry. Councillor Bentley, we're moving to the vote. Thank you. Then, if we move to the vote, can I have a show of hands in favour of the motion? All those against, please? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Item 15.2. I understand that there may be an alteration to this motion, and I would ask Councillor Sean Davis to confirm that point.
Madam Speaker, there's no such amendment being made, given the conduct of the opposition members today and the name-calling and, frankly, bullying that's been taking place. Just for the record, there was some conversations taking place between group leaders around allowing a change to the motion in order to seek support. But given the conduct of members opposite, I'm not now willing to make that change.
Very well.
To propose the motion in my name and seconded by my colleague, Councillor Clare. Telford and Wrekin reaffirms our strong objection to any merger with Shropshire Council and oppose the government's proposal for an elected mayor for Shropshire. There are no circumstances whatsoever where such a merger with an elected mayor would be in the best interests of our residents here. And as we've seen this evening, a Labour administration on the side of our residents with a budget that's been put in place tonight will be a budget that will continue to be on the side of our residents, despite the voting against that we've seen today. Voting against a council tax freeze for this year and next year. Voting against the money for communities, people and our businesses, and voting against some of the things that they have the audacity to put into their election leaflets. And we have been waiting a long time for this levelling up paper. And the reality is the levelling up paper that's come from government is about more politicians, not more skilled jobs here in Telford and Wrekin. It's talking about reorganisation of local government, not the reorganisation and the addressing the inequalities that we have here in Telford and Wrekin. It's talking about the process, not the solution. The ability to level up the communities of this borough, to make sure that public health inequalities, life expectancy gaps are narrowed, making sure that our young people and our adults have the skills and the training that they require. Instead, it's empty words and yet more process from a government that's run out of ideas, run out of slogans and run out of road. Madam Speaker, it cannot be right that we go on a large-scale reorganisation with Shropshire Council or another council. The reality is that on the watch of this Labour administration, unlike Shropshire Council, car park charges have been nil in Telford and Wrekin, despite the fact that they continue to increase across the border. Our roads and our footpaths are in a better state in this borough compared to others, and that's because of a Labour administration, and the budget this evening demonstrates that tonight. So this is a motion against a merger. This is a motion for our residents here in Telford and Wrekin. We want our fair share from government. Did you know that our residents send around £100 million from their pockets to the government in the form of road tax? We get less than £3 million back. What is that? That is not levelling up. That is sending money to a Conservative government that gives it to its donors and its mates. We're paying more in personal taxation to the government, not because wages are going up. In fact, most wages are stagnating over the last 10 years. It's because there's a deliberate freeze of personal tax allowances, which means more people are paying more tax, more people in the higher tax band because of that active decision. VAT at 20%, corporation tax for the big cronies being reduced, while business rates and business tax going up for small and medium-sized businesses. This is a motion that's on the side of our residents. It's about making sure that we get our fair share, and I hope that members across the chamber will send a very clear message to the government. We are not for merging with Shropshire Council. We're not for a directly elected mayor, and the interests of our residents is best served by a Labour administration.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Madam Speaker, the Labour administration at Telford and Wrekin Council have a commitment to protect, care and invest in our borough and its residents. This is at the very heart of everything that we do and every decision that we make. This Labour administration's objection to a merger with Shropshire Council and the proposal of elected mayor for Shropshire is covered by all three elements of this pledge. Protecting the residents of Telford and Wrekin's best interests and finances. The plan to take money raised in our borough, which is the largest town with ever-growing population, and divert it to the rest of Shropshire, where I would bet they would not prioritise Telford for the investment that came back. We have all seen the way in which other councils' finances are managed so poorly, and the stark contrast between the way we here at Telford and Wrekin run our finances and other nearby councils run theirs is clear for all to see. Care. The interests of our residents have always been the top priority of this council. The idea to merge and put in place a mayor in Shrewsbury, I would imagine, worries me immensely, to be honest. I struggle to see that they would ever have the interests of residents of Telford and Wrekin as their priority. This Labour administration, based in Telford, made up of people from Telford, will always prioritise our Telford residents and invest. Cross over to Shrewsbury. I happened to go there the other day. The state of the roads, the state of the town centre, potholes everywhere. We in Telford and Wrekin have the third best roads, we're in the top 3% of roads in the country, because of the investment that this Labour Council has made. Our roads are just one of the many areas that we have invested in. Climate change, leisure and culture, pride in our high streets, quality housing, the list goes on. Investment that members opposite didn't support, even this evening in this evening's budget, not supporting investment in our borough. They should be ashamed. If a merger were allowed, this investment, money from Telford and Wrekin residents, would be invested in other areas like Shrewsbury. Telford and Wrekin residents paying for the years of failure to invest in these things by Shropshire Council. We will never accept that any merger with Shropshire Council could be in the best interest of our residents, and I second the motion.
I will open this up to comments now. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I fully support this motion. We have some of the most excellent services in the country, both for adult social services, children's social services. And I could see if we ever got merged with Shropshire or there was a joint mayor that we would be diluted, and I could see our assets and our well-being and our finances being raided to support a failing part of our county, which is sad, because I feel really, really sorry for those residents that live in the rest of Shropshire who are being treated as almost second-class citizens themselves because their Conservative council has failed them on so many levels for so many years. That focus on that failure should be left in the rest of Shropshire so the residents can actually elect people who will look after them better. We don't really want a mayor setting up simply so that a failed Conservative MP can get a job elsewhere when he gets booted out eventually. That would be totally wrong. So I'm all for us staying independent and looking after our residents and focusing on our residents to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
Councillor Dugmore.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. It does appear that the leader has taken his bat and ball home over this, which is a shame, really. The Conservative group has made it quite clear on numerous occasions that a merger with Shropshire Council will be resisted, as would any elected mayor for Shropshire. We don't believe either would be in the best interests of our residents. It is ridiculous to politicise this debate, as we all fundamentally agree. It says more about the insecurity of the administration, who fear a merger as they would be out of power for the foreseeable future. They're only against it because trying to save their political skins. The thing is that we are all in fundamental agreement, and even though it would mean that we would have a Conservative administration over Telford and Wrekin, we don't actually support the merger between Telford and Wrekin and Shropshire, but we do object to politicising the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It just occurred to me that, it shudders me to think that the government intends on joining with the Shropshire Council. And just one example of their incompetence, really. In the last number of years, they paid £54 million for the two shopping centres, Darwin and Pride Hill. And I read a couple of weeks ago and that it's worth £12 million now. Now, we have one of the, that's true actually, and now the independent financier thinks that it is worth £12 million. That is a taxpayer's money wasted by the Shropshire Council, and I don't think that we want to join up with them to, they can teach us anything better. So we'll stay as we are, and I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll move back to Sean, please.
I hope that we are all able to support the motion, given the sentiments of the speakers, and to demonstrate that to our MPs here in the county, but also to government ministers from London who are very interested in a merger of Telford and Wrekin and Shropshire. I'd ask that we have a recorded vote on this subject so that that can be sent in a very clear message in the minutes. Thank you.
That's carried. We will have a recorded vote.
Councillor Bentley. Councillor Blundell. Councillor Boylan. Councillor Burford. Councillor Burrell. Councillor Callier. Councillor Eric Carter. Councillor Lee Carter. Councillor Cook. Councillor Davis. Councillor Dugmore. Sorry, 4. Councillor Eade. Councillor Arnold England. Councillor Evans. Councillor Ian Fletcher. Councillor Veronica Fletcher. Councillor Goff. Councillor Greenaway. Councillor Healy. Councillor Holt.
4.
Councillor Hoskin. 4. Councillor Yanker. 4. Councillor Jawar.
4.
Councillor Jones. 4. Councillor Lavery. Councillor Lawrence. Councillor McClements. Councillor Mehta. Councillor Middleton. Councillor Murray. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Offland. Councillor Overton. Councillor Priest. Councillor Gilly Reynolds. Councillor Shirley Reynolds. Councillor Steve Reynolds. Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Sahota. Councillor Scott. Councillor Seymour. Councillor Charles Smith. Councillor Malcolm Smith. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Karen Tomlinson. Councillor Bill Tomlinson. Councillor Turley. Councillor Watland. Councillor Wennington. Councillor White. Councillor Wright. Councillor Bentley. Thank you, Madam Speaker. With 1 abstention, that's carried.
Thank you very much. That is carried. Item 15.2. Please can Councillor Andrew Eade move the motion as detailed in the agenda?
Right, thank you very much, Speaker. Current government guidelines point towards all authorities having a responsibility to increase the use and supply of green energy. But, as with any development, this should not mean that renewable energy overrides other protections. Indeed, the MPPF expects us to protect and enhance valued landscapes, sites of biodiversity, and recognise the character of the countryside and the benefits of farmland. However, solar farms currently in the pipeline nationally will remove a whopping 150,000 acres of farmland, in addition to the 100,000 acres of rural land lost each year to housing and industrial developments. And it's against such a backdrop that I consider our current policies on solar farms to be at best inadequate and at worst non-existent. In the light of the Council's climate emergency, the local plan review must undertake and define a strategic land supply, specifying where solar panels and solar farms will be permitted, and also where they will not be permitted. One vital impact of us allowing solar farms to be built on farmland, even poor quality farmland, is to put at risk our food security. This country is now farming less land than at any time since 1945, and as a result, 60% of our food is imported from abroad. Now, and heaven knows, with Russia as the largest supplier of wheat in the world, what a parlous state that we could find ourselves in. Our current policies are not environmentally desirable, viable, or sustainable. Farmland is already a renewable energy producer in its own right, as it produces food from direct sunlight and also acts as a carbon sink.
Arguments that some animals would still be able to graze underneath panels are spurious, as the land will be degraded and polluted, with half in permanent shadow and rainwater washing out pollutants, such as lead or cadmium. Consequently, it's likely that such land will never revert back to agricultural use, and what condition it might be in after 30 to 40 years is completely unknown. So, members, what are the alternatives that we should consider? This council needs to be at the forefront of sourcing our food more locally and sustainably to support the local economy and influence how farming land should be used. We need a local food policy. We can also make a major contribution to carbon reduction by introducing policies that require new developments to have solar panels on roofs, heat pumps in homes, and higher new build standards. And ask us the question why on earth we haven't done so with some of our own buildings already and the industrial estates. I would have thought that we should be leading by example. Our local plan policy ER1 states that our council promotes and supports low carbon development. However, that is no longer enough, and there must be a presumption against solar farms being located on any farmland unless a developer can prove a specific need. Put simply, the local plan may have been fit for purpose several years ago, but that is clearly no longer the case, and hence the planned review of the local plan. One final point, if I can make this point. I picked up at a recent cabinet meeting that the leader of the Liberal group, Councillor Tomlinson, stated that land at Shorebirch East a wonderful opportunity for a solar farm. Let me assure you of one thing, Bill. We will relentlessly and strongly oppose any thoughts, plans or campaigns you may have to foist a huge solar farm on the community around Shorebirch or Rapley. We have always wished to see that gateway into Telford and Wrekin at Wellington remain as the striking open farmland that it is at the moment, and has always been so. Solar farms have their advantages, Bill, no two ways about that, but they must not be at any cost and in any place. That review of the local plan is urgently required. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Seymour.
Madam Speaker, it is becoming clearer by the day that more and more applications for solar farms on agricultural land are coming forward within the borough. Let me start by saying that I am fully in support of solar energy. When solar panels first became available, I was one of the first to have them installed on the roof of my home. Indeed, I had both photovoltaic and hot water panels installed long before the current panic about climate change. However, they need to be in the right place. This means they should go on public and private housing, and especially on the roofs of public buildings, business properties and industrial sites. A good start has been exemplified by Living Spaces on behalf of the Wrekin Housing Trust, where 30% of the houses on a brownfield site in Park Road, Mallesley, have in fact been installed with PV panels and battery storage. A good start, yes, but we need to go much further and faster. However, these panels should definitely not be going on valuable agricultural land of any category. Currently, I have two 25-year solar farms already in my ward and another two 40-year applications currently ongoing. The latter two, however, lie within the Wrekin strategic landscape area, so hopefully we can maintain a strong argument against these. If climate change arguments are to be supported, and we are all very aware of these, then we should be maximising our agricultural land for the protection of biodiversity and especially for the production of food, thus reducing the amount that needs to be imported. This has been well covered by the previous speaker. This is especially pertinent in view of what is happening in Ukraine, which currently produces vast amounts of wheat. On top of all the other horrors, we need to consider also what long-term effects of the loss of that might be. Furthermore, although developers are currently required in respect of solar farms to show a net gain in biodiversity, the metric by which they work this out for planning purposes is being heavily criticised by one of the UK's leading ecologists from Oxford University, Dr. Kay Willis, and backed by many other ecologists as not being fit for purpose. Dr. Willis concludes, and here I am quoting, that net biodiversity gain will end up being net biodiversity loss. This is surely something of which we, as an authority, and the planning department in particular, must be very cognizant. I therefore strongly urge the Council to support this motion to limit the construction of solar farms on agricultural land in the borough, and resolve to ensure that this is reflected within the current local plan review. I second the motion.
I would like to invite Councillor Tomlinson as right reply.
Well, I was looking forward to supporting this motion, and still do actually, because if we need a review of where solar farms should and shouldn't be placed, and it's recommended to be reviewed into the local plan, then I'm quite for that. And I welcome Andrew Wee's input to what he has said tonight. In terms of Shorebirch East, however, you may or may have not forgotten, maybe it's not told residents quite clearly, that the government set down there that has been put down for industrial development since the 1970s. And from a recent film I watched called Master and Commander, the reason that the local residents proposed that it should be a solar farm is what's called the lesser of two evils, in that they know that the local authority can hardly rebut the fact that industrial development may well take place on that site, as was proposed before. However, for less environmental impact, they would have preferred themselves a solar farm rather than houses or industrial development, if development, as dictated by the government, has got to take place. However, coming back to the original motion, I'm more than happy for the review to take place of our local plan to see where solar farms should take place. And I would almost love Shorebirch East to remain agricultural. Thank you.
I understand that there is an amendment to this motion, which will be shown on the screen with additions in yellow and deletions crossed through. Can I call Councillor Overton?
Speaker, if I may, I mean, I've read the amendment, and I mean, I don't want to be awkward about this, as you can imagine.
Councillor, can I say it needs to be proposed and seconded before you? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's good that the Conservatives have started to notice that this is a national issue about solar panels being applied for across the country, because there is an agenda as well, the climate change agenda, where we are looking to look at renewable energy across the country instead of fossil fuels. So it's good that they've recognised that. I would not like to comment on any current applications, live applications that the council has referred to, because that would be unfair for the applicants who've made that application. The review of the local plan provides an opportunity for the Council to assess and update policies contained within the local plan, reflecting on changes in government legislation and local circumstances, as well as global issues such as climate change. Having declared a climate emergency in 2019, addressing climate change and supporting renewable low-carbon energy generation is a key priority for this Council. The local plan helps to deliver low-carbon development, contributing towards the commitment to a low-carbon borough. The Council maintains a robust position with local plan policies when read as required in conjunction with the national dictated MPPF and PPG. And, these are things that we can pick up through the local plan review, and that is why we've amended the motion as such.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Can I move to Councillor Eade, please?
Well, just draw to your attention what I said earlier, that amendment seems to negate the original motion completely and utterly. It's the exact opposite.
Hello to address the council, please.
Speaker, Rule 9.10 of the Constitution states that amendments can add or delete words, provided it doesn't negate the original motion. Madam Speaker, my understanding of the original motion is that it was intended to seek the policies in the local plan review, which is underway, to address the policies in relation to solar farms, and the amendment as proposed does that. Madam Speaker, it's a matter for you to decide whether or not the amendment is appropriate, but that's my advice.
I believe we should discuss it and then take a vote on the amendment. Are there any comments on the amendments, please? Councillor Nelson.
Actually, I'm going to say very similar to my two colleagues, because what they said was right, and we have come up with very similar arguments and not collaborated even perhaps as much as we should. We seek to build on the work the Council have already done and are doing with regard to climate change, climate mitigation and renewable energy. There is opportunity to do more, and we need new policy. As my colleague has already said, and we quite in... What?
Can I remind you that we are discussing the amendment rather than the original?
And the amendment refers to strengthening policy, and ours says inadequate policies, and frankly, what's the difference? We need better policy.
We are discussing the amendment at the moment. Thank you.
Please, can I refer to better policy? And are you using my time up now? Elective... Thank you. We propose the Council introduce, to strengthen policy, a strategic approach to land allocation for renewable energy as exists for housing development, to strengthen policy, an energy SLAR or SLAR. The Council should adopt a strategic hierarchy for solar energy sites. First, domestic roofs. First, because this gives the most distributed generation and consumption. The electrons are used colloquially where they're made. Then industrial roof, then brownfield and public fallow ground. And only lastly, when all sites are consumed, should we even consider tillable farmland, and this would strengthen policy. Britain is only 60% food self-sufficient. The land that is cultivated is in many cases even cultivated, resulting in soil depletion, over-dependence on chemicals like nitrates that end up in the groundwater, or pesticides decimate biodiversity. We need the land to become much less intensive but still able to be tilled, and this needs to be to strengthen policy. The argument that solar on farmland contributes to biodiversity because it results in enforced fallow ground for up to 40 years is specious, because meantime we are importing the crops with air miles, for all I know, lost to the plough. The Council have already recognised the critical importance of a local food policy and are introducing a local food policy, and I commend this. Shropshire may be less hit by rising temperatures than other counties. Tillable land here will be at a premium. At the moment, the solar farm industry is taking a parasitic approach to location. They build big installations on easy sites, farmland, near power distribution points. The Steeraway 30 megawatt proposal is one such example. The big 50-hectare solar farms need to be steered to sites that do not remove tillable land, and that would strengthen policy. There are millions of square feet of industrial roof in Telford, much owned by this council. We need a... Excuse me? Madam Speaker, can I withdraw the mention of the actual name of a particular thing? And I apologise for mentioning it.
Thank you.
We need a local plan policy which prioritises roof space first.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Nelson. I have allowed you to speak, but I would invite Anthea Lowe to elaborate more on the amendment, the meaning of amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't actually see any further indications, but it was simply to clarify the purpose of the debate for an amendment is to debate whether or not the amendment should be accepted. But as I say, I don't think there's any other indications, Madam Speaker. Okay. So apologies. I think there is now an indication.
Yes, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I did indicate when there was some controversy over whether the amendment should be allowed or not, or negated. Actually, if people stop and read the amended text, they'll see it makes better sense than the original. All our planning policies, applications are determined within the National Policy Planning Framework, which we have to do, and also within the rules and regulations which the government from time to time put out and change. And they can't deny that's what we do. And all cases are determined on their merits. That's the way we have to do it. But this amendment actually makes more sense, because it notes that the policies within Telford and Wrekin local plan are used to determine planning applications for solar farms. At the moment, we have to use the government stuff and everything, and the local plan is there, but it's not as good as it could be. And the amendment goes on and resolves to strengthen the policy position and continue support for low carbon energy generation within the current local plan review. So it's in the local plan review, which is in the original proposal. We're doing it now. We're going to do it. We're going to do it now and strengthen that now and actually do it. And I'm surprised that the opposition who put forward the original didn't say we'll accept the amendment, because it reads better than the original.
Well said.
So I actually believe we should get on and pass the amendment and pass the whole lot then, and then get on with it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I believe there are no more indications to speak, so can we move on to Carolyn, please?
Thank you. There's a number of points have been made in relation to this issue, and thank you, Councillor Smith, because I think this is still in the spirit of the the substantive motion. I think this is a council. We are clearly committed to more renewable energy in our borough. We have to be. There's not only because of the issues that we're seeing with the war in Ukraine and the sanctions on Russia and the impact that's having on fuel supplies, gas supplies, but also the IPCC report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report that came out this week. That shows that we have to get ourselves off fossil fuels. We absolutely have to, if we've got a chance of actually still having a habitable world. It's that serious. So we have to be supportive of renewable energy. And of course, our existing local plan policies, as Councillor Smith says, are in line with the National Planning Policy Framework, have made decisions in support of solar farms and have made decisions against solar farms. So those policies have allowed that. But of course, policies can always be strengthened. I would like nothing more than for every new build, commercial or residential, in this borough to have solar panels, grey water systems, the full works of renewable and energy-saving elements to their build. But unfortunately, we have to wait till 2025 for the Future Home Standard to come in. And so it's quite hard for us to insist on all of those things. But of course, in our own buildings, we have put solar panels on the roofs of public buildings, and we are building houses through New Place with solar panels. So we are utilising roof space. In relation to local food policy, that is something we're actually taking forward through our climate change partnership. We've got a new partner come aboard who is an expert in this area and is supporting the partnership so we can develop those plans. So this is something we are committed to. And so I hope I can alleviate some of the concerns of members opposite. I think we are committed to ensuring that our policies can be as robust as they can be, both in our local plan and our actions in climate change. But as I say, at the moment we are working within the national planning policy framework, and decisions are made on their own merits. Thank you.
I understand that Councillor Bentley did indicate as I was moving across to Councillor Healy, so I would like to invite him to speak.
Thank you. First and foremost, just a quick question. Is it pertinent that members of the Plans Board should take part in a debate like this?
Councillor Bentley, this question has been posed previously.
Not to me, that,
No, sorry, by other members. And this isn't a matter that involves any pecuniary interest, and it's a pecuniary interest that would preclude somebody from participating in discussion and voting on a matter. But as far as I'm aware, no members have a pecuniary interest in solar farms, and therefore it would be appropriate that they can remain and take part in the discussion.
Thank
you. Right, okay, thank you for that clarification. On the point of land east of Shorebirch, may I remind you that particular piece of land is in my ward and Councillor Burrell's.
Councillor Bentley.
Whilst Councillor Tomlinson can make an opinion, I would expect any planning application.
Order, thank you. Order. This is not on the amendment.
Right, I'll get to it.
I'm sorry, I'd like you to speak about the amendment, thank you, not any other cases. Thank you.
Well, I can't support this amendment because what I don't believe is the national planning policy does not prevent councils from being innovative or taking the lead. So policy or not, we could take the lead on this, and we're not doing so.
Thank you. Could I move to Councillor Andrew Eade, please?
To sum up, do you mean, Speaker?
Yes, please. You're right.
Charles, really, Charles, you know you determine planning applications within planning policy, and it is that policy that we're looking at changing and altering. As I said before, the local plan may well have been suitable and fit for purpose several years ago, but it isn't now. Now, I know there's a thumping great picture of a solar farm inside the local plan document, but there are no mention, as I can remember, of policies regarding to solar farms per se. And that's the point I'm making. We need those in there. We need to be robust. And I believe that we can press for higher standards in homes. I think there was a case in House of Lords that ruled on that. So, you know, I'll take sort of advice on that. But it is the review of the local plan that is essential, and certainly around food security, amongst other things, that we do need to get our policies straight and in the right order.
Thank you. Move to the vote on the amendment. Okay, I would like now to move to the vote of the amendments, please, for the amendment. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you.
So that now becomes a substantive motion. Okay. And you open it up to debate.
Yes, this now becomes a substantive motion, and I'm going to now open this up for debate.
Well, it's been moved that the question be put. Is that seconded?
Yeah. Okay.
Is that seconded?
Is that seconded? Yes. Thank you.
The question be put.
Can I? Yes. The question be put, please. Thank you.
So all those in favour?
All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you very much.